So first I'd like to introduce you to the concept of prefabs. So prefabs are basically to save the state of a game object so that you can reuse it again in the game. Like sometimes you want, like if you want to make enemies, you can either make this cube and you will start duplicating it. But how many times you will do that? So instead we use this prefabs where we can basically just pull them out from our assets and reuse them as many times as we want. And the best part about these prefabs is if we change anything in the prefab, all the objects in the game will also change. So I'll show you how to make it. So basically if I want to make a prefab of this cube, I'll just drag this cube and put it over here. And you'll see this cube prefab has been made. To check if a game object is a prefab, basically see on the left side here it is blue in color. Okay, all these white means they are non-prefab, they are just game objects in the scene. While this blue means it is a prefab. Okay, I have already made some prefabs for our enemies. You can take a look here. So one way of just putting enemies onto your game is just directly dragging this prefab and putting it in your game. There you have 3 enemies I've put. And in case you want to change the height of the enemy or something, you can come back to the prefab, just change it to 1. And once you save, all the other prefabs in the game will also change. They've been raised above the ground because the position was set differently. So don't worry about that. I'll change it back to 2. Okay, that was one way of putting enemies. But a more fun way of putting enemies would be spawning them into your scene, and that's what I'll be showing you. So I'll first tell you the logic behind the spawning, and then I'll show you the script. So the basic logic is I have made this enemy spawn prefab. Okay, so in this prefab basically we have this sphere collider, which you can see by this green thing, and I've added the enemy spawn script. So basically what the script does is when a player enters this collider, it will instantiate an enemy. Instantiate basically means it will create an object using a prefab. Okay, so that's one of the basic ways to spawn an enemy. Basically if the player enters this region, it will instantiate this enemy prefab onto the position of this enemy spawn point. And one important thing to note here is the sphere collider should be a trigger. A trigger is basically, okay, when you don't put this trigger, what happens is this acts like a sphere. Basically if you throw a cube in it, it will bounce off and act like a sphere and basically do actual physical collisions. But if you put a trigger, if an object enters into it, it will call a function. Once it goes out of it, it will call a function. So it doesn't give any physical collisions. Okay, now we'll move on to the script. So this is the enemy spawn script. For now, ignore this. This is for the randomization, which I'll show you later. First, we'll focus on just the collision trigger spawn. Okay, so I have the first 2 lines. I'm basically trying to get a reference to the enemy prefab, which we will be instantiating. And the second, this private boolean. This is important because I do not want the enemy to spawn infinite times. I want it to spawn only once. So once it has spawned, I want something to switch this off. So that's why I've put a private bool here, which is initiated to false. Now this function is important for triggers. Private void on figure enter. Basically what this does is, this function is called when another collider comes inside the collider of the trigger. Basically any other collider which comes into the sphere, like enters the sphere, this function will be called. And all the data of the collider which is entering this will be stored in this other variable. This variable called other. Right? And if you ever want to like know what a function does, you can just hover over it, and it will and in Unity and Visual Studio will tell you what the function does. Okay. So basically in this code, what is happening is I'm checking if the enemy has already spawned. That's why I have initiated over here. And this exclamatory mark is basically not operator. It basically gives the opposite of whatever variable I use. So not false will give true. And this if statement will run. Now this is the important part. The instantiate function takes 3 arguments. Okay, it takes your one game object, the position, and the rotation. Okay, so this game object, we know we have to instantiate our enemy, which I have put over here, which I have taken a reference over here. So we can put that. As for the position and rotation, you can put whatever position or rotation you want. But if we want to instantiate at the position of the enemy spawn point. So to get the position of the object the script is on, we can directly put transform.position. This transform, as you can see, it is written the transform attached to this game object. And then transform.position gives the position of this transform. Same thing with rotation. You can change all this according to your needs, and it will instantiate the same. Okay. And lastly, we put spawned equal to true, so that after we have already spawned it, it will not spawn again. Okay, so I'll put this enemy spawn somewhere over here. I'll probably reset it. We'll come to origin and we'll put it here. Over here, okay. And we'll play. So I'm moving and this enemy has appeared suddenly. Okay. That's how it works. Okay, that was the enemy spawning when the player comes near it. Now next we'll see how to randomize the position of these spawns. Okay. So for that, basically we need to get, since this is on a plane, so the y value is 0. So basically we need the x and z values on this plane. So I have defined again at the top here private float values xz and a vector 3 position, or I named it pos. Okay. Now to get random values, we can use the random.range function, which basically, as the name implies, gives us a random number between random float between the range of whatever we put. I put here minus 23 to 23 because this plane is 5:5, so that's 25 units and 25 units. So if I put 23, it will be somewhere inside this plane. That's why I put 23 here. It will get a random float value between minus 23 and 23, random z value from minus 23 and 23, and this. So pos we have defined as a vector 3, and to change the transform position, we have to give it a vector 3. So I have made pos equal to new vector, and I've added these x and z values. The y value remains 0. Okay. Because we are again doing it on a plane and the y value of this plane is 0. And then we change the transform.position, basically changes the position of the object the script is attached to the new position which we have made. And we take the transform.position, that is the position of this object, and we change it to the new position that we have made over here. So this is new randomized position, and this is, we are just changing the position, and we'll see how it works. Press play. Now I had previously put it over here, but now it has been randomized, so we have to go search for it now. It has appeared. Okay. If you want to see in the scene view, then it randomized the position over here and we found it. Now we have seen randomized spawning. Well, there's only one enemy. We can put more enemies, and at the start of the game they'll all get randomized. Just finding, I'll show you in the scene itself. So enemy spawn 2 is here, spawn 1 is here, enemy spawn is here. So we got 3 randomized. Okay, now Now obviously if you want more enemies, we'll have to keep putting this enemy spawned over here, which is a little hectic. So I'll show you a good way to basically manage all this enemy spawning and stuff. So let's delete all this. So one essential thing most games have is a empty object with a script called the game manager. Okay. Game manager is basically mostly used to like manage different parts of the game. Like here we want to manage our enemies, right? So we can create a new script for it. Okay, so we can basically we can either, if you want to use the enemy spawn method where the player walks in and then the enemy spawns, we can basically just do the whole randomized thing. Instead of doing it here at the start, we'll just do it through the game manager. So let's write a function for that. Okay, so all this that we have done, we can just do it through the game manager. Now, to make life easier, like before I told you how it is very hectic to put the prefabs in, we'll just define the number of enemies we want in our scene. So say public int n. Put all this in a for loop. Okay, so I hope you understand what's happening. Basically, if I want, let's say, n number of enemies, this will basically run the loop for n times, and for each n enemy it will calculate the position. And now we have to just instantiate the enemy, which you can just put it from here. Okay, you don't need this. You can copy it, and instead of enemy you put enemy spawn. And now we need a reference enemy spawn. So to get a reference to the enemy spawn prefab, we can again define it over here. Okay, so basically what it does is it will we have given a reference to our enemy spawn. Now and we have taken the number of enemies we need. So when we call the enemy spawning function, it basically runs a for loop, gets randomized positions, gives the position to the and instantiates the enemy spawn with the randomized position. So instead of transform.position, we have to give pause. And at the start of the game, we can call this function. And we'll put, let's say, 3. Okay, save it. Let's see if it runs. Okay, perfect. I won't go find it. I'll just see it in the scene view. Okay, we see we got 3 enemy spawns over here at randomized positions. Let's go find this. Okay, now we'll come to the main part, which is the shooting part of it. Yes, and no doubt you all will be ready. Okay, let's see. Okay, for shooting, we need two things in the scene. First we need a gun, obviously, to shoot or to make it look like shooting. And the second thing we need is this crosshair. So this is basically a UI of the game. You've seen in games now, you'll see in mobile games there'll be buttons over here. They're not in the 3D scene, but they are on your screen. So that is basically, that screen is your canvas over here. And if I were to zoom out, see, this is your canvas, see the canvas properly, you can turn the 2D mode on and see this. This is the crosshair I put. Crosshair. I will increase the size. This crosshair is just one image. Okay, this image I put on the canvas, and when the game is playing, this dot comes on the screen. This is basically used for aiming, okay, to help you aim. This canvas will not be there in your project straight away. To get the canvas, just right click, go to UI, and you can select any one of them. You'll get the canvas. But since we are using an image, click on image. Okay, this image along with the canvas will pop up. Okay, I'll show you how to do this. Turn this off. This image came here. We want to match it to the center, so I'll reset the transform. Now this here source image, there's nothing at the moment, but if you can change it with the default things, or you can make your image on your own. Since we want a dot, you take this knob image and put it over here, and to see change the color, make it red, okay, and make it small so that you can see properly. That's 7. Change the width and height, make it really small. Okay, you got the dot. So now crosshair is ready. We need the gun. Okay, we'll start with the gun. The gun, I have just put a simple cube. You can obviously do 3D modeling and put your own meshing. Okay. So the gun is basically attached to the camera, because you want the gun to rotate with the camera, right? So if you're turning left, you want the gun to turn left. Turning right, you want the gun to turn right. Looking up, gun to turn up. So the gun is attached to the camera. So if you want to make, just right click on the camera, create empty, name it gun. Some different name. Then make it under the gun, make a cube. Now I have already made the cube. Made so that it fits properly and all. You can check the values of the transform and whatnot. So that there is your cube or gun. Okay, so I'll show you the script. Okay, so this is the basic script. Since we are shooting the raycast from the camera, I have a reference to the camera first. And okay, so this is one important thing. This is a layer mask. Okay, layer mask, you don't exactly need it, but it is good to know about it. So okay, so objects are in different layers. Okay, over here you will see on the side there's a layer, you can see, right? There is default, transparent. So basically these layers, the camera draws these, you know how this game you renders, right? It first draws all the layers. So if you don't want some layer to, if you don't want something to come up, but you want it in your scene over here, but you don't want it to show in the game, you basically put it in a layer and tell the camera, don't draw this layer, then it won't come. Okay, that. Or if you like here in the transparent effects, you can make it so that the camera doesn't draw this layer. Okay, so nothing in the transparent effects layer will come, right? Okay, so basically I have put my enemies in a different layer. If I go to enemies, yeah, I put them in a different layer. To make a layer, just click on add layer and type the name over here. I put enemy over here. Then you can go back, and then from the list you put enemy. Put for the cube also, just in case. So basically what I am doing in this script is, I am making a layer mask. So a layer mask basically is used for specifying a particular layer. So what the code is basically doing, it shoots a raycast from the camera, goes forward in the direction, it collides with those objects who are in the layer mask. So I put the layer mask equal to, this is a bitwise shift operator. Basically by default, if I put layer mask equal to 1, by default it puts to the first layer, and I have shifted it to the 8th layer where my enemy is. Okay, you see here, enemy is in 8th layer. So if your enemy is in 9th layer, you put 9 over here. Okay. Okay, so this is the basic of layer mask. This comes in the update function. Okay, raycast hit. Raycast hit is a type of object who has been hit by a raycast. Okay, so that object I have named hit. And in the if condition, if you see input.get button on fire1. This fire1 is a code for the left mouse button. Okay, so basically what this statement means is when I click the left mouse button, it will return true, and this if will run. If you can see over here, returns true during the frame the user pressed down the virtual button, identified the button. The virtual button here is fire1, which is mapped to your left mouse button. So if I click my left mouse button, this if will run. Okay, now the second if. Okay, now this is the main part. Inside this if, I have got my raycast. So this is the physics class. Raycast is part of the physics class. And its arguments are basically the origin, basically from where the raycast will be shot, in what direction the raycast will be shot, the object it hits, the information, the variable we want to store it to, the maximum range you want, and the layer mask. Okay, so here the position is the position of our camera. The reference to that is cam. So to get the camera position, we do camera.transform the position. Okay. Now camera.transform the forward is basically the direction forward of the camera. Understood? And hit we have already defined. So out hit basically takes the information of the object we hit and puts it inside this variable called hit, so that whenever we need some information about the object we hit, we can use hit. Math.infinity, basically I have put the range as infinity. So as far as the ray, it will give us the basically it'll try to hit, the ray will go as far as it can. Okay. And the layer mask again, I have put the enemies in layer 8, so it will only return true if it hits an enemy. Okay. So this will only run, in essence, this will only run when the raycast shot from the camera hits an enemy. And basically I have put destroy hit.collider.game. Destroy function, basically as the name suggests, it destroys the object. So what object? The hit. Hit is just the information. So we want hit.collider, and hit.collider.game object is just the game object this collider is attached to. Okay, we will see this in action. Okay, did you all see that? Whenever I shot it, the enemy got destroyed basically. So that was the basic shooting.
So this part is for adding health. So we have our enemy here in our prefabs. So first thing that we need to add is a health bar for our enemy. So anything 2D that you want to add in a 3D game, you need to create a canvas. So canvas you can create by right clicking the enemy and clicking canvas here inside the UI. So canvas is just like a drawing board. You can draw some image on it and it will show up on the screen. Now canvas, you can see this canvas, it is very big. That is because this is in a mode called screen space overlay. This means that whatever you put in this canvas would be pasted over your camera, main camera. So this is useful for if you want to put the player health. It will come up here. It will just be pasted on the main camera and it will move with the main camera. But in this case, we want it to be over our enemy, like over his head, right here or something. So we want this canvas to move with our enemy. For that, we need to change the canvas's property, and that is world space. Now the canvas will move with our enemy, but as you can see, the canvas is very big. So we'll just scale it down and we'll position it at 0. So now this is our canvas. Now let us add the health bar. So for this we'll just add 2 images or something for the background and the red health. So first we'll create an empty object, call it a health bar. Okay. And this health bar, this is going to be the parent of the images. So to create an image, you go here to UI and you click on image. So this is an image. Now that thing is over my object, so I'll just split. So now you want to resize this image so that it looks like a health bar. First let's call it background. Now to resize 2D images, you use this rect tool. And now you can resize this image. Now we want to resize it with the center. That is, we want the center to be in place. So for that you start resizing, but then you click Alt. Then it will resize with respect to the center. Okay. So now that looks like a background, and we'll just adjust the color. Now let us create the health. For that we'll duplicate this and call it health. This will make it into a red color. Now we want to have control over the scale of our health so that this health bar becomes smaller as our health reduces. For that we'll use a component called a slider, which is a UI component of Unity. But for that our health bar needs to know what the dimensions of this health are. So to do that, first we need to the health bar needs to have the same dimensions as health. So now as you can see, the dimensions of the health bar and the health are same. And now we use this button here and we use this button. You need to press Alt, Shift and then press this button. So what this thing does is this property is called stretch, and that places these 4 corner points. So these corner points is what determines the size of your health bar, and the stretch is with respect to the parent object. So if I were to like increase the width of this parent, the health bar's width will also increase because it will stretch to fill the parent object. And for background also we'll do the same, so that if we increase the width of the health bar itself, the background's width will also increase. You need to press Shift, Alt and then press this. If you don't press anything, then what it will do is just place the 4 corner points at the health bar. That is, the size of the background will be determined by the health bar, but it won't change the scale. Like this width of the background will not change. You just need to replicate the steps. Doesn't need to be anything. You won't use this anywhere else. So now we have this. Now we can add the slider component. Now this component can do a lot of things, but in our case we just wanted to represent the value. And this fill rect. This fill rect is the thing that you want to scale when you're changing the slider's value. So this thing we want to scale is our health. So now you can see that the health went to 0. That is because the value is 0 here. So now to increase the value, the health increase. So all we need to do through our script is change this value of this slider, and we will be able to control our health. For now we'll just keep it at 1. Okay, our goal is when the player shoots us, the enemy will tell the health bar to change this value so that it reflects. So the enemy will have a script that will be told by the raycast that you have been hit. So whenever the player shoots the enemy will know that he has been hit. The enemy will tell the health bar, change this value of yours, and the health will update. So first let's do the updation of this health. So we'll create a script. So first thing is we need to let's just add it to our health bar. So we need to find this component and adjust this value. That means we need to reference this component. It's a variable that we need to reference. So, and any variable that you want to show up in this inspector. if it shows up in the inspector, you can just drag it into there and it will reference it. Any variable that you want to show up in this inspector, you should put public. So public, and the variable type is slider. So slider. But I can see that the slider doesn't show up. That is because this is a UI element. And for that, we need to add a header file using Unity engine.ui. So this is a header file for all UI elements. Now you can see that the slider is recognized. Slider. So if I just save this here and go to Unity, I can see that the slider shows up and I can drag this inside. Okay. Now I want to change this value of the slider. So we can just use the start function. At start, we'll just change slider, and this is like a class. Slider is a class, so you can access the member functions of the class. One of the member functions is value, data members, and let's change the value from 1 to 0.5. Now this is a float and 0.5 is a double, so you need to write F. So now at start, the health will become 0.5. Now we want to do this through a function that the enemy will tell this health bar script to change this slider value. So we'll create a function for that. Okay. And the enemy will tell what health to set. So the enemy is the thing that knows what health it has, and it will tell the health bar what health to set. So this all the health bar will do is slider, it will change the value to whatever new health it is. One problem that we have is this health bar that we have created will always have a maximum value of 1. That means like maybe one enemy has 100 health, another enemy has 30 health. Then we will need to divide that number by 30 or 100 to get a number between 0 and 1. Instead of that, we can just change this maximum value that we have. So we'll just create a function for that also. So we'll call it set max health. And in here, I'll just give it the max health. Okay. So here I have another member, data member called max value, and this is max health. So we'll just say set max health. The max value changed to 100, but we didn't change anything in our value. It was 1, it is still 1. So now the health bar has to reflect a length of 1 by 100 of its original length. So we'll change the value also to the max value. So slider dot value is equal to max health. Yeah, now it is, the value is also 100. So now we have this. We obviously don't want to call this here. We want the enemy to call this. Okay. So now let's create our enemy script that will recognize that I have been shot and then tell the health bar to change its health. So we'll create an enemy controller script. So we'll create a script called enemy controller, which will control our enemy's behavior. For now, it will just adjust the health and it will destroy the enemy. Those are the only behaviors it is going to have. So what do we want to do here? First thing is we want to set the maximum health. This is dependent on the enemy, but for now, let's say that all enemies have 100 health or whatever health you give. So we'll make it a public variable so that you can actually give what health you want. So now if I go to enemy and add our enemy controller, then I can see my health. So let's set it to 100. Okay. Now I want to send this health to my health bar as the max health. So to access this health bar, there are 2 ways. One, you can access it by reference. That is, you can create a public variable here, public, and each, you can see that this health bar is a public class. So you can access it from any other script. So you can just type in health bar and it should show up. And you create an object referencing this health bar, and you can give it any name you want. I'll just call it health bar. So now you have a reference to this particular health bar script. So you can do anything. So you can do anything in this script with this reference. So what do we want to do? We'll just set the health at the start. So what we want to do is health bar. We want to access this function here. So dot set max health, but it doesn't show up. That is because every function that you want to access from another script needs to be made public, just like variables. Functions also need to be made public if you're accessing them from other scripts. Now this is also something that we'll access from the enemy controller script, so we'll make this public. So now if you do set max health, it shows up, and we just want to set it to our health, whatever it is at the start. Okay, so now I am setting this max health, and now I want to set I want to know when I have been shot. So for that I need to go to the shoot script, which is here. Okay, so for now what I'm saying is when I have been shot, I want to destroy this object. I don't want to destroy this object now because I just want to reduce the health. So what I want to do is first I'll create a function to reduce the health. Then I'll call this function when I have been shot. So we'll create a function to reduce health. It is going to be called by this. So obviously it needs to be public. So public void take damage. And we'll specify the amount of damage that we give. Now here, if it is player specific, you can provide what damage your player causes, and you can send that damage here so that it is different for every player. Now there is only one player, so but in general. So float damage. Now we want to reduce our health. So first we should reduce this health that we have. So health minus equal to damage. And then this is our new health, which we want to set our health bar to be. So health bar dot set health. So what we are doing, we are calling this health function, and we are passing our current health as the new health. So it will change. Now we need to call this take damage function in our shoot. So instead of destroying our object, what we'll do is call this function. So first we need to access this enemy controller. Now unlike these cases, so we need to access a script which is very similar to health bar. Like this is a script that this object had, and we are accessing it by creating public health bar, and then we are just putting this script. Okay, we didn't do that. You can just take this object which has the script and just put it here. So now this script that we have here is being referenced by this object here. But here we can't do that because we don't know which enemy we are hitting. So we don't know which. So first we'll just add this enemy controller to our enemy. We don't know which enemy controller that we have here. So it could be one of these three enemies spawned by these three spawners. Any one of them could be the enemy that is being created. So I need to find what enemy I have shot, which is very similar. Like we did hit.collider.gameObject because we don't know which enemy we are shooting. We found the enemy that we are shooting through the collider. So we'll do something similar, hit.collider.gameObject. So now we have the object that we are shooting. Now these things are called components. So if you want to access a component, so we want to access this enemy controller component. For that we need to use a function called getComponent. And you need to give the component name, which is enemy controller. And this is a syntax of two braces. And now you can store this into a variable called public enemy controller, not public enemy controller, some name, whatever. And you can store this script reference into this object. But here we are just going to use it for one line. We are just going to call this function. So we can directly just call the function here, take damage. And we'll take the damage to be 20 for now. Okay, so this is going to call this function is going to call this function, and this function is going to reduce the value of the health. So we don't okay, so let us set our health here to be 100, and we'll set our health bar to be the health bar. Okay, so let's hit play. Save. So we are help and our helper. Our helper has the slider. Okay. Okay, I'll see this one later. So this set health is just going to change that health. So one problem that we have is that when we move, this health bar does not face the camera. So we want this health bar to face the camera. For this, if we see this health bar in our Unity scene, this health bar has this z-axis. Now this z-axis, we want it to be exactly same as the z-axis of the camera, so that it is always like facing the camera, however we rotate the camera. So what we'll do is in this canvas, we want to create a new script which is going to rotate that canvas. So we'll create a C# script, face camera. Okay. So in this script, we want to make the canvas turn in such a way that it aligns with the z-axis of the camera. So we'll just do it on update. Update is called every frame. We want to actually do it on late update. Now what is late update is that it happens after update is called. That is, once the things in update finishes, this thing happens. We want to call it in late update because if we turn the camera initially, it might cause some jitter. So we want to do the canvas changing at the end. So to change where the canvas looks, there is a function called transform.lookAt. So this function, first we want to create a vector from this point in the direction of the camera. So this point is the canvas's position, which is transform.position plus the camera's forward direction. Now, if you have only one camera in your scene, you can easily access it by using camera.main. It will just access the camera that has been tagged main camera here, main camera. It will access that camera and you can access anything, but we want to access the forward direction, which is the z-axis here, z-axis. And in this direction, we want the canvas to look. Okay, so now if we play, now you can see that no matter where I go, this health bar is always here. Okay, so now we come to the big problem of the enemy being destroyed. Let me just remove this game manager. So I have only one enemy now. It has an enemy controller, and when I shoot, okay, so somehow the shoot again went to destroy. Was I changing a different shoot? Okay, so we'll just change this. Hit.collider.gameObject. So as we did previously, .get component enemy controller take damage. Right. So we want to save this, and we want this shoot to be applied to our player. So let us check if this is the shoot that is being applied. Right, so this is the shoot that is being applied, and now we'll try to shoot him. Okay, yeah, so now the health is decreasing like this. Now what we want to do is when the health goes to 0, we want to destroy this object. So we will not keep reducing this health. We will reduce it only if the health is greater than the damage I'm causing. If it's not greater than the damage I'm causing, then I want to die. We'll do the die later, but I don't want to reduce the health. Okay, so now it should not reduce below 0. Because damage is 20, at 5 shots I'll get to exactly 0.